Do you remember those forgotten sandwiches no one makes anymore? The ones that turned a few simple ingredients into something special? They filled lunchboxes, kitchen counters, and hearts with quick comfort that tasted like home. When did we stop making food that felt that real? You can't have a conversation about classic grandma sandwiches without bringing up the egg salad sandwich. This sandwich started out as an economical way of using up extra eggs. Eggs were a budget-friendly protein source, and this sandwich with just a few ingredients from the pantry. This one also used mayo to bind the sandwich together, but some grandmas added a bit of mustard for a tangy kick. This was a post-Easter favorite, as after the holiday ended, there were plenty of hard-boiled eggs on hand, and of course Graham didn't let anything go to waste. You can make this one yourself with some store-bought egg salad, but it won't taste the same as it did back in the day. Ribbon sandwiches looked like something from a dollhouse tea party, but they came from a place of real effort. Thin slices of bread were stacked in layers, each with a different filling, maybe egg salad, then ham spread, then cream cheese and olives. Sometimes the bread colors alternated too: white, wheat, rye, stacked in neat rectangles and trimmed of crusts. When sliced, they revealed pastel stripes like a surprise inside. They took time. They took care. And they were usually made by someone who wanted the table to feel special. You found them at showers, receptions, and the occasional work luncheon. They were not filling. They were not practical. But they said something else. They said someone went the extra step. Someone chose charm over calories. For working men, these sandwiches might have appeared only on holidays or community events, but when they did, they left a mark. You might not remember the speech or the decorations, but you remembered the sandwich that looked like a checkerboard. A reminder that even simple ingredients, arranged with love, could feel fancy. Fluffernutters were the sugar bombs of childhood, smeared between slices of Wonder Bread like sticky little secrets. Made from peanut butter and marshmallow creme, this New England classic was as sweet as the recess bell and just as anticipated. No meat, no veggies, just a sugary swirl that glued your sandwich shut and made your fingers tacky with every bite. The texture was half the fun: soft bread, gooey center, and that unmistakable stretch of marshmallow when you pulled the halves apart. They were a staple of elementary school lunch tables, always wrapped in plastic and slightly flattened from being stuffed into a backpack. Every bite tasted like skipping spelling tests and drawing dinosaurs in the margins of your notebook. The Fluffernutter was not subtle. It was not sophisticated, but it made you feel like you were getting away with something. Over time, it disappeared from school menus and fell out of fashion, replaced by yogurts and wraps and grown-up meals for tiny hands. If you've ever walked the streets of downtown New York, I'm sure you're familiar with the infamous pastrami on rye. If your grandma's from the Big Apple, chances are her recipe is highly regarded. This sandwich became a staple in Jewish delis in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, thanks to Eastern European immigrants. This one just featured an old-fashioned slice of pastrami on rye bread and a dollop of mustard. Grandma knew that when it came to sandwiches, sometimes less is more, and pastrami on rye is the perfect example of that. But hey, don't forget no pastrami on rye is complete without a pickle on the side. The tartness of a dill pickle or the sweetness of a bread and butter pickle is the perfect contrast to the savory pastrami. If there's one sandwich you can never go wrong with, it's the old-fashioned grilled cheese sandwich. This one is the epitome of comfort food, and Grandma's version was a childhood favorite. Even the pickiest eaters used to beg for this one. So this one became popular during the Great Depression era, when we had to make do with three of the most common ingredients in our pantries: bread, cheese, and butter. Now, some of us used to get creative with our grilled cheese by adding extras like sliced tomatoes, ham, bacon, or even pickles. But this one was best enjoyed simple and plain. Oh, and let's not forget, it tastes even better when paired with a warm bowl of tomato soup. Before burgers and fries, grilled cheese and tomato soup used to be the ultimate food combo of our dreams. The best part? Most cheese sandwiches are vegetarian and can easily be made vegan by adjusting the type of cheese and oil. So here's the part where it gets controversial. Whether a hot dog qualifies as a sandwich is still debated. But for the sake of this video, let's consider it one. I mean, technically, it fits the definition of a sandwich, meat between bread, but many people see it as its own category. Hot dogs have been a staple of American cuisine since the late 19th century and became popular with ballparks, cookouts, and summer fairs. Now, the modern hot dog has its origins in German sausages like the Frankfurter or Wiener, but Graham gave it her own twist and made it according to our likings. The best part? If you don't like mustard, she skipped out on it. Yeah, the classic hot dog is topped with mustard, ketchup, and relish, but it could be customized. In Chicago, hot dogs were famously topped with a combination of mustard, onions, pickles, tomatoes, sport peppers, and celery salt, never ketchup. Sardine and mustard sandwiches are as basic as they sound and much better than you might initially give them credit for. Be realistic and think about a post-Depression era America where a lot of neighborhoods and homes were still reeling from the effects. Dollars could buy a bit more and went back to their usual strength, but everything was a bit touch and go for a while, and dishes like sardine and mustard sandwiches were the cure. Even more attractive than the taste was the price of this beauty, because for about $1.50 you had yourself a solid meal. Many labor workers, like your friendly neighborhood forklift or dock workers, might remember eating these during their lunch breaks. People would usually spice it up with other vegetables, toppings, and peppers to make a proper feast out of a cheap thrill. And we would like to join the fun too. Corned beef tongue with mustard in between fluffy bread slices. Okay, beef tongue might be way out of your palate, but don't disregard the corned beef tongue sandwich just yet. For something to fade from history, it's got to cement its spot there first, right? Can't do that if you don't bring something to the table. Perhaps this one will bring a lot more than you'd expect. It's traditionally prepared with carrots, garlic, red pepper, black pepper, salt, onions, mayo, and spice like bell pepper, paprika, and some garnishes like lime and parsley. So we already have the makings of a savory delight. You really want to keep a close eye on the beef tongue while it's in the pot, though. It can alter the flavor or dry it out fast. Though this sandwich has faded into the past now, the intricacy and delicacy through which it was created is a marvel to look back at. Maybe one day, this sandwich will come back at fancy restaurants, but for now, it remains a figment of the past. Elvis Presley wasn't the only one who loved a peanut butter and bacon sandwich. The combo of crispy, salty bacon and creamy, rich peanut butter created a high-protein, energy-packed sandwich that was a favorite for anyone in need of a quick and filling meal. It's easy to see why this sandwich caught on. It balanced savory and sweet, crunchy and creamy. The bacon gave it that satisfying crunch, while the peanut butter added a smooth richness. It wasn't the healthiest option, but when you're working with a tight budget and even tighter food supplies, it was a treat that gave you the energy to keep going. Not only was this a cheap meal, but it was also indulgent in a way that made you forget about how hard times really were. The combination of these two ingredients might have seemed strange, but it worked, and it worked well. But if you're craving something a little lighter, something that came before the age of bacon and peanut butter, the next sandwich on our list might be just what you need. The head cheese sandwich in basic terms is just slices of head cheese, which is a cold cut made from meat from the head of a calf or pig on bread. If you'd rather not the head, then you can also use trimmings, and in terms of assembly, this resembles more of a charcuterie board than anything else. It's packed to the brim with vegetables, spices, and other aromatics. Though still, the entire head of an animal can be a bit of a daunting task for any chef. Once you've got your bread toasted and your spread spreaded, add your spices and vegetables and the hog's head cheese and assemble accordingly. If you actually manage to pull it off, this is definitely a vintage worth getting your hands dirtier than usual. The patty melt was not just a sandwich, it was a lifestyle. It belonged to truck stops, corner booths, and places where the waitress calls you hon. Start with a beef patty, not too thick, not too thin, grilled until the edges charred just enough. Then pile on caramelized onions so sweet they practically melt, and drop a couple of slices of Swiss cheese on top until it oozes over like lava. But the crown jewel? That rye bread, buttered and toasted right on the griddle. It soaked up everything, the beefy drippings, the onion sweetness, the crispy edges of the cheese. Every bite was a perfect mix of crunchy and gooey, salty and buttery. You were not just eating a sandwich, you were biting into pure diner energy. People had this at lunch and still talked about it at dinner. If your parents ever made this at home, you were one of the lucky ones. And if not, you probably still remember your first time trying one and realizing a sandwich could actually stop time. But not every sandwich needed to be hot off the grill. Some came cold, weirdly fancy, and straight from the pages of a church cookbook. Olives might not make a comeback anytime soon in today's world, but they will return on the list with egg and olive sandwiches. Like we said, olives were starting to get really hot as the ideal sandwich topping. Adaptable, flexible, and cheap is all you want out of an accessory to your sandwich. Like those fancy earrings that go perfect with your dress, olives and eggs went together like a Cupid-certified match made in heaven. People went wild around the mid-1970s for hard-boiled eggs and salted olives in their sandwich, green or black. Black olives got a bit more traction with eggs though, whereas greens synergized better with peanut butter. Would you ever try a sandwich that consists only of an egg and a fruit? By the way, you did know olives are fruits, right? The patty melt was not just a sandwich, it was a lifestyle. It belonged to truck stops, corner booths, and places where the waitress calls you hon. Start with a beef patty, not too thick, not too thin, grilled until the edges charred just enough. Then pile on caramelized onions so sweet they practically melt and drop a couple of slices of Swiss cheese on top until it oozes over like lava. But the crown jewel? That rye bread, buttered and toasted right on the griddle. It soaked up everything. The beefy drippings, the onion sweetness, the crispy edges of the cheese. Every bite was a perfect mix of crunchy and gooey, salty and buttery. You were not just eating a sandwich, you were biting into pure diner energy. People had this at lunch and still talked about it at dinner. If your parents ever made this at home, you were one of the lucky ones. And if not, you probably still remember your first time trying one and realizing a sandwich could actually stop time. But not every sandwich needed to be hot off the grill. Some came cold, weirdly fancy, and straight from the pages of a church cookbook. The Sloppy Joe was chaotic. Ground beef simmered in a sweet and tangy tomato sauce, scooped onto a hamburger bun. It was never neat, it was never photogenic, but it was honest. Dads made it with a pound of ground beef and whatever was left in the pantry. Ketchup, tomato paste, onions, Worcestershire sauce. Sometimes it was just canned sauce from the store. You spooned it hot onto a bun, and it soaked through before the second bite. It dripped, it stained. You needed a stack of napkins and maybe a fork for the end. But it was warm. It was filling. It was 5 ingredients and 15 minutes from stove to table. For working men, it was dinner that looked like effort but cost very little. Kids liked it, adults tolerated it. Everyone knew it. The Sloppy Joe was not trying to impress, it was trying to feed you. And it did. Prairie chicken was once so common on the plains that people barely looked twice when it landed on their plate. These days, you'd be lucky to spot one outside a conservation area. But back then, its lean, almost pheasant-like meat was a staple for hunters and homesteaders. Sandwiches were built around it, typically layered inside a dense cornbread pocket with spicy mustard leaves gathered from nearby fields. The cornbread wasn't the sweet version we know today either. It was rough, baked in cast iron or even directly over coals. The mustard leaves added bite and helped cut through the meat's earthiness. Sometimes wild onions or a dab of rendered fat made their way into the mix. It was a sandwich built from necessity but remembered with pride. A true frontier meal that's all but vanished in modern kitchens. Except maybe in memory. Peanut butter and marshmallow sandwiches were sticky, chewy, and completely chaotic in the best way. Unlike the Fluffernutter, which used smooth marshmallow creme, this version went old school, layering whole marshmallows right onto the peanut butter. The result was messier, thicker, and somehow more exciting. As you bit down, the marshmallows gave a stretch and the peanut butter clung to everything, your teeth, the roof of your mouth, your fingers. It was the kind of sandwich that slowed you down, made you chew carefully, and left sweet residue in the corners of your smile. Some kids toasted it, watching the marshmallows melt into gooey bliss. Others just packed it cold and let the sandwich warm up on its own in their backpack by noon. Either way, it was dessert disguised as lunch, and it was glorious. You rarely saw it outside of grade school, but back then, it was a lunchbox secret weapon. No meat, no greens, no apologies, just joy between two slices of bread. The fish stick sandwich was a miracle of convenience. Frozen breaded rectangles of fish, crisped in the oven and stacked onto sandwich bread with a squeeze of tartar sauce or even ketchup. It was a staple of elementary school lunches and tired weeknights, usually accompanied by applesauce or peas that rolled around the plate. Kids loved it because it was mild and crunchy, and parents loved it because it was quick. Most fish stick sandwiches weren't trying to win awards. They were trying to make everyone stop complaining. Some households elevated them with cheese, lettuce, or soft hoagie rolls, but others stayed true to the basics: white bread, fish sticks, and whatever sauce was nearby. This sandwich was often the first introduction to seafood for picky eaters, cloaked in crunch and comfort. There was something weirdly satisfying about lining up the fish sticks like puzzle pieces, making sure every bite had one. It wasn't gourmet, but it got us through. Sliced bananas with mayo on white bread. This banana and mayonnaise sandwich is a bit of a wild card for sure, but keep an open mind because the South definitely does, which is where this interesting creation finds its origins. Typically, a lot of comfort food comes out of the southern USA. As you may have guessed, preparing this is as simple as taking candy from a toddler. Now I know what you're thinking. Bananas and mayo sounds worse than water and oil. However, there's a reason it comes into comfort food. All you need is a sliced banana, 2 slices of fresh bread, and a good spread of mayo. Maybe not the best you'll ever have, but what's the downside? Give this forgotten experiment a try and see if it's up your alley. Creamed chipped beef on toast, or as anyone who ever served in the military will tell you, SOS. No, not a cry for help, though it looked like one. This was dried beef, shredded and stirred into a thick, milky white sauce with a bit of pepper and sometimes a touch of Worcestershire if you were fancy. Then it got spooned over toast, or biscuits, or whatever bread you had. It was a direct descendant of World War II rations. But by the 1970s, it had made its way into American homes, school cafeterias, and greasy spoon diners across the country. It was salty. It was creamy. It looked like a mistake, but somehow it kept getting made and loved. It was affordable, filling, and tasted better than it had any right to. Parents made it because it used cheap pantry ingredients. Diners served it with coffee refills. Kids ate it because they did not know any better, then grew up craving it again. It might not be pretty, but it is unforgettable. Still, not everything on this list is heavy. Some sandwiches were just simple, clever ways to use what was left on the breakfast table, and a little sweet on the side. The salami and cheese sandwich was another deli favorite. This is another Italian classic. Salami and cheese sandwiches have roots in Italian cuisine, where cured meats like salami were often paired with cheeses in traditional sandwiches. Salami paired well with various cheeses, including provolone, Swiss, or cheddar. So grandma just used whatever was on hand. But for a true salami and cheese sandwich, crusty Italian ciabatta is a must, and it's even better when it's homemade with love. Now salami has been around since ancient Rome, but it became popular in sandwiches during the 20th century as Italian-American communities spread their culinary traditions. This sandwich wasn't really the healthiest choice out there, but Graham loved spoiling us every now and then, and there was no better treat than this bad boy. If you've ever had creamed corn, you know how rich and flavorful it can be. Now imagine spreading it onto bread for a sandwich. That's exactly what the creamed corn sandwich was. Canned creamed corn, drained just enough to prevent it from being too watery, was spooned onto toast or bread. It was messy, yes, but it was also delicious. The sweetness and creaminess of the corn paired perfectly with the bread, creating a satisfying and hearty meal. It wasn't the kind of sandwich you'd take to a picnic, but it was a beloved comfort food in many households during lean times. Whether it was a quick lunch or a dinner replacement, creamed corn made it easy to put together a meal that was both filling and affordable. The messiness just added to its charm, and it was a sandwich that brought a taste of sweetness to an otherwise tough time. If you think creamed corn on bread is indulgent, wait until you hear about the next sandwich that combines salty and sweet in an unexpected way. Elk jerky sliders on cedar buns were winter food with a scent you never forgot, meaty, smoky, and soaked in the aroma of trees. This was not just lunch, this was ceremony. Elk jerky, cut thick and dried slow, was a prized food in the colder regions. When times were good, it got layered into small cedar-smoked buns made from flour mixed with bark ash or fir tips. Served at winter gatherings, these sliders were eaten cold or warm, sometimes dipped in broth or spiced oil. The cedar buns were not just flavor, they were preservative, story, and smoke all at once. The sandwich gave energy, preserved meat, and honored the animal. Today, jerky is processed and peppered with artificial sweeteners. The cedar has vanished, and so has the meaning. We made the meat last, but not the memory. What used to keep people alive through months of snow now lives in glass jars at gourmet stores. We call it rustic. We call it old-fashioned. But the people who made it were not trying to be cute. They were surviving. Can we even still taste the difference between survival and snack food? The loose meat sandwich is like the Sloppy Joe's tidy cousin. It skips the sweet tomato sauce and gets straight to the point. Seasoned ground beef crumbled and piled onto a soft hamburger bun. No binding agent, no fillers, just beefy goodness. This sandwich was made famous by made-right diners in the Midwest, where regulars would sit at Formica counters, watching steam rise from griddles. It's the kind of sandwich you eat leaning forward, elbows on the table, catching the loose bits before they hit your lap. Often dressed up with mustard, pickles, and onions, it's simple, filling, and oddly comforting in its messiness. There's something about the way it falls apart in your hands that makes it feel honest. Unpretentious food for unpretentious people. If you grew up anywhere near Iowa or Illinois, chances are you had one of these after Little League or in a small-town diner with a checkered floor and a waitress who called you hun. The loose meat sandwich never tried to be cool. It just stayed dependable. Three Sisters pocket flatbreads were the closest thing to soul food that the soil itself ever gave. Inside a warm flatbread pocket went a mash of squash, beans, and corn, the Three Sisters of traditional native agriculture. They were not just ingredients, they were family. Grown together, harvested together, and eaten together. The flatbread was made from maize flour or leftover mash from the harvest, cooked hot and fast on stone or clay. The inside could be creamy or chunky depending on the cook, and was often flavored with wild garlic or chili. Children would eat them running. Elders would eat them slowly. They were warm, golden, and grounding. But they are almost entirely gone now, replaced by mass-produced breads and flavorless substitutions. You can still find the Three Sisters on school posters or in museums, but not folded into a meal you can hold in your hand. We broke apart what was always meant to stay together. And in doing so, we lost not just nutrition, but balance. Who decided we did not need to eat this way anymore? And what else have we unlearned because of it? The pimento cheese sandwich is a Southern tradition that spread like wildfire through cafeterias, picnics, and family reunions. The filling, a creamy, tangy blend of shredded cheese, mayonnaise, and diced pimentos, was made by the bowlful and kept in the fridge for whenever company came over. On soft white bread, it was the perfect blend of smooth and savory, with a little kick if you added pepper or hot sauce. Some versions came grilled, others were left cold, served with chips or sweet tea on the side. At its heart, it was an inexpensive way to feel fancy. Somewhere between a spread and a dip, it clung to its bread like glue, and nobody minded. For many, it tastes like church potlucks, backyard folding tables, and long afternoons under the fan. In certain households, it wasn't just a sandwich, it was a rite of passage, handed down in recipes scribbled on index cards with mayonnaise stains. You don't just eat a pimento cheese sandwich, you remember it. Cucumber sandwiches were delicate little reminders that even the school lunch table had room for refinement. Slices of cucumber, thin, chilled, often peeled, rested on buttered bread, sometimes layered with cream cheese or a dash of dill. The bread was soft, sometimes crustless, sometimes rye. It was like a tea party had wandered into the cafeteria. Cucumber sandwiches were quiet, crisp and cooling, refreshing in a world of meat and mustard. They did not make a mess. They did not leave a smell. But they stood out, precisely because they did not try to. These sandwiches were usually packed by someone who believed in manners, napkins, and balance. They were for the kid with the neat lunchbox, the thermos that never leaked, and the sandwiches that never squished. But they were not boring. Today, they are mostly seen at brunches or fancy luncheons. But back then, they were a gentle rebellion against the chaos of the cafeteria tray. Tomato sandwiches were summer captured between slices of white bread, simple and sublime. Nothing more than fresh, juicy tomato slices, a generous smear of mayonnaise, and a sprinkle of salt and pepper. That was it. But somehow, it was everything. The bread soaked up the juice until it was just on the edge of falling apart. The mayo added richness. The salt made the tomato sing. And when you bit into it, it felt like sunshine. These sandwiches were often packed right after a backyard harvest or a trip to the local farmer's stand. They were the definition of seasonal eating. No heating, no meat, just freshness layered onto something soft and humble. Kids either loved the tomato sandwich or hated it. There was no in between. But for those who did love it, nothing else would do. The sandwich tasted like summer break, like porch swings and cicadas, like sitting in class and counting down the days until school let out. Tomato sandwiches came and went with the season, and when they left, you missed them. You remembered how something so simple could somehow be so full. Roasted grasshopper cakes with choke cherry glaze were the original protein bars. Grasshoppers were toasted until crisp and nutty, then folded into a simple grain batter and cooked like pancakes or cakes. Once cooled, they were glazed with boiled-down choke cherry syrup, dark, tart, and sticky. You could eat them hot off the griddle or carry them for days. They were light but filling, with a crunch that surprised anyone unfamiliar. Grasshoppers weren't seen as strange. They were a respected source of clean, abundant protein. The choke cherry, with its deep red hue and sharp bite, added color and complexity. This was not a joke food. It was real fuel, prepared with care. Today, we shy away from insects on the plate, calling them pests instead of provisions. But once, these little cakes were survival in a pocket, nourishment in a bite, and proof that the land always provided. You just had to listen. The tuna and cream cheese sandwich was what your grandmother made when she wanted to feed you something fancy that was also suspiciously efficient. It was a relic from the 1940s, a time when mayonnaise was not the only binder in town and lemon juice felt like fine dining. Chilled tuna blended with cream cheese, a touch of citrus, and sometimes even crushed pecans or chopped celery. This sandwich wore a pressed napkin and gave off a whiff of Sunday brunch in the cafeteria. Kids either loved it or politely folded it back into the sandwich bag and focused on their chocolate milk instead. The bread was often buttered, soft, and crustless if someone was feeling generous. What made this sandwich stick in the mind was its smoothness, its unexpected tang, and how it seemed to signal that whoever packed your lunch had a plan. This was not a slapdash peanut butter job. This was intentional. Over time, tuna salad took the spotlight and cream cheese retreated to bagels and frosting. But in lunchboxes from another era, it played a surprisingly elegant role. Here's another French classic that's a bit different from the rest of the sandwiches on the list. The Monte Cristo sandwich is a variation of the French croque monsieur. In simpler terms, it's a classic grilled ham and cheese sandwich. To make a great Monte Cristo, the sandwich had to be fried just right, and unlike most, this was dipped in egg batter and fried. The name was inspired by Alexandre Dumas' novel The Count of Monte Cristo, and this gave it a luxurious touch. If you have French ancestors, you likely have fond memories of eating this at family brunches. You might be familiar with peanut butter and banana, but how about a banana and mayo sandwich? It's a southern oddity that, over time, turned into a tradition. The combination of ripe banana slices and mayonnaise might sound strange, but there's something about the sweet, slippery texture of the banana paired with the creamy tang of mayo that works. It was a cheap, easy-to-make sandwich that satisfied a sweet tooth while also providing some sustenance. It's not the kind of sandwich you'll find at a deli, but it was a comfort food for many who grew up with it. Over time, it became a quirky favorite, one of those sandwiches that you either love or have no interest in trying at all. But whether you loved it or not, it's hard to forget such a memorable and unexpected combination. And while the banana and mayo sandwich might be a Southern classic, things are about to get even tangier with the next sandwich. Sometimes simplicity is key, and the relish and cheese sandwich is the epitome of that principle. A slice of American cheese paired with a dollop of sweet pickle relish was all it took to create this unexpected but surprisingly delicious sandwich. The relish added a little sweetness and tang, while the cheese gave it a creamy, melty texture. It wasn't about fancy ingredients, just bread, cheese, and relish. The sweet and salty combination made it a great quick snack when funds were tight and you needed something to fill you up without breaking the bank. The relish provided a burst of flavor, cutting through the richness of the cheese, and the sandwich itself was easy to put together with ingredients that were often on hand. Even though it may seem like an odd combination, the simplicity of the relish and cheese sandwich made it a popular choice for those who needed something quick and satisfying. Whether you had it as a snack or a meal, it always offered a good balance of flavors. This sandwich wasn't going to win any gourmet awards, but it did the job when you needed a cheap and satisfying meal. Sometimes, it's the simplest combinations that leave the greatest impression. But if you think a slice of cheese and a bit of relish is all you need for a great sandwich, the next one might just take your taste buds by surprise. Most of the lovers of chicken salad and grape sandwiches dwindled a lot over the years, and now it is just a memory. No one does comfort food better than Americans, and the iconic potato chips and cheese sandwich is proof. People would grab cheddar or mozzarella cheese and a packet of Frito-Lays or a can of Pringles and get busy at the table but not in the kitchen. Reason being, this was one of those 10-minute dishes that took absolutely no effort or time to make, like instant noodles. Barbecue-flavored chips would be preferred, because they added a secondary flavor, but all kinds were used and the crunch was just to die for. In the 1970s, chips like Pringles were getting more and more popular in America, and that made it even easier for this to take center stage. What would follow in the decades after was a growing concern for health, and people stopped making their favorite potato chips and cheese sandwiches, but we would love a 70s plate. If you've ever opened a can of sardines, you know it has a distinct, strong flavor, one that isn't for everyone. But during the Great Depression, a canned sardine and mayo sandwich was a common lunch that stretched a tight budget. Sardines were affordable, packed with protein, and could sit on the shelf for ages. They weren't just easy to find, they were easy to store. The fish was mashed up with mayonnaise, often with a little bit of onion for extra bite, then slathered between slices of bread. Though the flavor might have been an acquired taste, it was a filling meal that kept hunger at bay. And with the mayo adding creaminess, it was surprisingly comforting. While sardines may not be the most glamorous fish, they certainly played an important role in feeding families during tough times. You might think this sandwich is a strange mix, but it's actually a great way to get protein when the pantry's running low. And while sardines gave you that fishy flavor, it was about to get a little more sweet and creamy with the next sandwich on our list. Let's have a full circle moment with another sandwich that made sure leftovers didn't go to waste. Grandma's cold meatloaf sandwich was one of those dishes that tasted even better the next day. Meatloaf has been a staple in American kitchens since the Great Depression, when home cooks, mostly grandmas, stretched ground meat with fillers like breadcrumbs and oats. The sandwich became a popular way to make the leftovers go even further. Now, there were no strict rules for what went in this sandwich, so Gram put whatever she could find. You could use a variety of bread types, sourdough, rye, or even a soft white loaf, and top it with anything from ketchup and mustard to mayo, pickles, or even lettuce. You could even eat it cold, so it was really comfort food at its finest. There were many versions of this sandwich throughout the United States. Some meatloaves were sweetened with ketchup or brown sugar glaze, while others included a mix of ground beef, pork, and even veal. Roll-up sandwiches were the lunchbox experiment that actually worked. You took a slice of white sandwich bread and flattened it with a rolling pin or glass until it looked more like a napkin than bread. Then came the filling: peanut butter and banana, cream cheese with chopped bacon, even tuna salad if someone was feeling brave. You spread it edge to edge, rolled it tight like a sleeping bag, then sliced it into pinwheels. It was a working-class solution to picky kids and tight mornings. You did not need fancy deli meats or artisan bread. You needed one hand and 5 minutes. Sometimes you sprinkled paprika on top for color. Sometimes you stabbed each one with a toothpick and called it party food. But really, it was a clever way to stretch ingredients. They showed up at baby showers, church potlucks, and tired weeknight dinners. They were fast, they were cheap, and they made something boring feel like a treat. In homes where the toaster was always broken and the oven rarely used, the roll-up was reliable. Quiet, silly, and sometimes oddly perfect. Buffalo heart sandwiches on stone bread were once reserved for warriors and hunters. Thin slices of buffalo heart grilled directly over open flame, then served on thick, chewy rounds of unleavened bread cooked on hot stones. This wasn't just food, it was fuel. Dense with iron and flavor, the heart meat had a gamey bite softened only slightly by the bread's smoky crust. It was eaten with bare hands, no utensils, no ceremony, just fire and hunger. Some added wild herbs, others nothing at all. It was a meal designed to travel, to sustain through hard rides or long scouts across open plains. The bread, dense and flat, could last for days. The heart, once cooked, was chewy but nourishing. In colder months, the sandwich would be wrapped in hide and tucked into a satchel, staying warm for hours against the body. Today, buffalo heart is more likely to be seen as an oddity at a specialty butcher, the tradition forgotten or sanitized into restaurant novelty. But once, this sandwich told a story of strength, sacrifice, and survival, etched into every bite by hands hardened from the land. Liverwurst sandwiches were bold. You knew it the moment someone unwrapped one across the table. That unmistakable scent, rich and meaty, mixed with sharp mustard or sliced onions, hit like a wave. The sandwich itself was unapologetically old school, usually served on rye or pumpernickel bread, often from a family who still shopped at the neighborhood butcher. Liverwurst was spreadable sausage, soft but full of iron and flavor, and it had no intention of going unnoticed. It was the sandwich your grandpa swore by, the one your parents either embraced or exiled. And for kids, it was a gamble, either a lunchroom legend or a quick trade for something with peanut butter. But for those who loved it, liverwurst was gold. It was hearty. It was grown up. It was tradition sliced thick and pressed between slices of something dark and sturdy. Liverwurst never begged for your approval. It knew it was not for everyone. Today, you hardly see it outside specialty stores and deli counters. But for a time, it was part of the rotation. Loved by few, remembered by all. The egg salad sandwich is creamy, comforting, and unmistakably retro. Made from chopped hard-boiled eggs mixed with mayonnaise, mustard, maybe a dash of paprika or chopped celery, it's been a lunchtime standby for decades. Spread thickly onto white or wheat bread, it's soft enough to squish between your fingers but rich enough to feel like a meal. Grandmas packed them for road trips, office workers brought them in wax paper, and diners offered them as a cooling option on hot days. It wasn't fancy, but it was familiar, a quiet kind of indulgence. Every family had their own version, some chunkier, some smoother, some with green olives or scallions, others strictly plain. There's something nostalgic about the way it smells when you unwrap it, and the way the bread sticks just a little to the roof of your mouth. The egg salad sandwich never tried to compete with cold cuts. It just showed up, creamy and loyal, ready to carry you through till dinner. For many families, the cornbread and molasses sandwich was a nostalgic, soul-satisfying meal. This humble sandwich takes us back to the Appalachian table, where cornbread was a daily staple, especially when times were tough. Cornbread, often considered a basic but hearty food, was a versatile option when money was scarce. If the cornbread was a little stale or leftover, all the better. It was perfect for slathering with rich molasses, which was often a pantry staple in many homes. The molasses added a rich sweetness that made the sandwich not just filling but comforting in its simplicity. Sometimes a little butter was added for extra indulgence, giving the bread a velvety texture that made each bite even more satisfying. While it might not have been a gourmet creation, it was a connection to simpler times when families used what they had and made do. Cornbread was cheap and easy to make, and molasses was an affordable sweetener. The combination of the hearty cornbread and the sweet molasses made it the perfect meal when the cupboard was bare. For many, it was a meal that provided both physical and emotional comfort. Nothing fancy, but it worked. It wasn't about the ingredients being luxurious. It was about making the most of what was available and taking pride in the simplicity of the dish. This sandwich wasn't just a meal. It was a reminder of resourcefulness, tradition, and making do with less. Elvis did not invent the grilled peanut butter and banana sandwich, but he sure made it famous. This was a sandwich with soul. It started simple: 2 slices of soft white bread, a thick slather of peanut butter, and banana slices lined up like records on a shelf. Then, just when you thought it was done, someone threw it on a griddle with butter until it crisped and caramelized into something magical. The peanut butter melted, the banana got warm and gooey, and the outside toasted to golden brown perfection. It was sweet, salty, sticky, and just a little over the top, like every good memory from a Saturday morning. Whether you were 5 or 50, this sandwich hit all the right notes. Some people added honey, others tossed in bacon, and a few adventurous souls even threw in some cinnamon. But the classic version stood tall, proud, and a little indulgent. It was the kind of sandwich your aunt made when she wanted to spoil you without breaking the bank. It filled you up, slowed you down, and made you feel like life was okay, if only for a moment. But if you thought Elvis had taste, wait until you see what happens when Spam and pineapple get tossed into the same sandwich and actually make sense. When times were tough and budgets were tight, the potted meat and pickle sandwich became a popular choice for many families. Potted meat, often deviled ham or canned potted meat, was an affordable and long-lasting option that could be stored on the shelf for months. It was a quick fix for lunch or dinner, providing the protein needed to get through the day without breaking the bank. The key to this sandwich was the addition of pickles, which added a sharp, tangy crunch that perfectly complemented the rich, salty meat. The pickles cut through the richness of the potted meat, bringing balance and an extra layer of flavor to the sandwich. Combined with the soft bread, it created a hearty, satisfying meal. While the sandwich might not have been gourmet, it was practical, affordable, and filling. Potted meat, though not glamorous, was a staple in many households during difficult times because of its long shelf life and low cost. The pickles, often a pantry staple, brought a much-needed contrast to the meat, giving the sandwich a bit of freshness and bite. This sandwich was a great example of how people made do with what they had, using simple ingredients to create a meal that could feed a family without breaking the bank. And while the potted meat and pickle combo served its purpose well, things are about to get a little more savory and filling with the next sandwich. Cactus fruit and cornmeal sliders were the roadside miracle of the Southwest. Bright, spiced cactus fruit mashed and served inside thick patties made from masa. They were tangy, sweet, and just a little spicy. No 2 batches were ever the same. The cactus fruit, also called prickly pear, was roasted or boiled and sometimes mixed with chili or smoke-dried herbs. The cornmeal was turned into cakes or buns, fried golden on the outside and steaming inside. These sliders were eaten cold during treks, packed in wrapped leaves or thin cloth. The sugars gave energy. The corn kept the body going. They looked simple, but they were carefully balanced survival meals. Now, cactus fruit is made into candy or cocktail syrup. The cornmeal sliders, replaced by frozen buns and fast food slogans. These sandwiches were not designed for flavor alone. They were made for movement, for endurance, for life in the dry and open spaces. And when we stopped walking the same roads, we stopped making the same food. What else have we let dry up? The Turkey Devonshire was Pittsburgh's answer to comfort food sandwiches. It started with thick toast, usually white bread. Then came slices of roasted turkey, crispy bacon, tomato, and a hot cheese sauce. Poured on top and baked until bubbly. It was open-faced, served hot, and made you feel like you were eating something fancier than you actually were. It looked like it belonged on a diner plate under buzzing fluorescent lights. It was the kind of meal a tired father might throw together with leftover Thanksgiving turkey or deli slices. It was greasy. It was heavy. It stuck to your ribs. But it never left you hungry. It carried the mood of a city where winters were long, jobs were hard, and food needed to earn its keep. You might not have had the money for steak, but you could make this. And it tasted like someone tried. That was enough. Hazelnut and wild onion spread sandwiches were the definition of less is more. Made by grinding roasted hazelnuts into a creamy paste and folding in finely chopped wild onions, the mixture was then spread onto thin, grainy flatbreads. Sometimes the flatbread was made from acorn or chestnut flour. Other times it was just coarse ground maize. The result was earthy, pungent, and filling. This was a forager's lunch, light to carry, dense with nutrients, and quick to prepare. You could eat it cold or warm it slightly over stones. Some versions were spiced with foraged herbs or ramp bulbs. Today, hazelnut paste is something you find in chocolates and spreads, but in the old days, it was protein fuel from the forest floor. The onions? Pulled straight from the soil, not shipped in from a warehouse. Spam and pineapple might sound like a dare, but in the 1970s, it was practically dinner. This sandwich was all about stretching the rules and the budget. A thick slice of Spam got pan-fried until it was brown and crispy around the edges, then placed on a hamburger bun like it belonged there. Then came the twist. A pineapple ring, right on top. Not fresh pineapple, mind you. We are talking about the canned kind, sweet and syrupy, straight from the tin. The two came together like an accidental masterpiece. Salty, smoky Spam playing off the sugary tang of the pineapple in a way that confused your brain but delighted your taste buds. Some people added a bit of mustard, others just left it at that. Either way, it was weirdly good. Spam was everywhere during the war and stuck around long after, and by the 70s, folks had gotten creative with it. This sandwich was born out of necessity and stayed for nostalgia. It was quick, affordable, and always sparked conversation. Even if you did not like it, you remembered it. But if you were not into tropical flair, maybe you preferred your cheese melted and broiled to golden glory, open-faced and unapologetically old school. When it comes to sandwiches, only a few were as satisfying as the roast beef sandwich. So, many sandwiches were originally created as a clever way to repurpose leftovers, and this one was no exception. Roast beef sandwiches often started with leftovers from Sunday dinner. The Sunday roast was a time-honored tradition, and any extra beef was used to make delicious sandwiches for lunch the next day. In 1900, the dish was described by the Washington Post as unattractive and as a tired ark in a gravy flood. However, it gained popularity in the coming years when Grandma decided to take matters into her own hands, and by 1931, some critics even went as far as to describe it as a true taste of South Dakota. The bread for Grandma's roast beef sandwich was often homemade, and boy did she know how to dress it up. Whether it was a dollop of horseradish sauce, a spread of mustard, or a smear of mayonnaise, Gram knew exactly what it needed, and if we got lucky, she even snuck in a slice of cheese. Hot browns were not just sandwiches, they were events. Hailing from Louisville, Kentucky, the hot brown was the kind of school lunch you did not expect to see in your lunchbox. But when you did, everything else faded away. It was open-faced, built on toasted bread, and layered with turkey bacon and a thick, rich Mornay sauce that made it feel like something that belonged in a fancy hotel, not the corner of a cafeteria tray. The whole thing was broiled until bubbly, golden, and just messy enough to feel indulgent. It smelled like home. It tasted like someone had really tried. Most kids stared at it, confused. But for those who knew what they were looking at, it was heaven. Each bite was creamy, salty, and warm, something between comfort food and special occasion. You ate it with a fork, or tried to. It was not meant to be neat. It was meant to fill you up and slow you down. Today, you will find them in restaurants, dressed up and modernized. But nothing hits like the homemade version packed with love. Turkey and cranberry pemmican sandwiches were the original trail mix meets Thanksgiving dinner. Dried shreds of wild turkey were pounded with rendered fat and tart cranberries, then pressed into dense cakes or layered inside split cornbread pouches. This was not a meal made for pleasure, it was made for endurance. But somehow, the sweet-savory combination felt familiar, even warm. Carried during northeastern winters, this portable power food was eaten during hunts, travels, or times when game was scarce and the snow ran deep. Sometimes additional nuts or seeds were mixed in, and when cornbread was on hand, it became a sandwich, dense, chewy, and surprisingly rich. It didn't need refrigeration, it didn't spoil quickly, and it held the memory of autumn feasts long after the season had passed. Today, pemmican is known mostly among survivalists and historians, but this specific turkey and cranberry version was once common in the colder woodland regions. It's strange to think a meal this ancient tastes so much like the holidays, but maybe that's the point. It held on to warmth when everything else had frozen. The Manwich sandwich is what happens when you need dinner in 10 minutes and your pantry has exactly 2 ingredients, a can of Manwich sauce and a pound of ground beef. It's the store-bought shortcut to a sloppy Joe, soaked in sweet, tangy tomato sauce and ready to heap on a hamburger bun. No chopping, no spice rack, no slow simmer. Just brown the beef, pour the can, and you're done. In the 70s and 80s, it became a weeknight hero, advertised as, "A sandwich is a sandwich, but a manwich is a meal." It was a dinner-time fix for busy parents, latchkey kids, and anyone with a microwave and a spoon. The smell alone could draw kids out of their bedrooms like moths to a flame. Some added cheese, others pickles or onions, but most just kept it simple. It wasn't glamorous, but it got the job done. Today it still holds a place in the hearts of those who remember TV trays, linoleum kitchens, and the clink of a can opener on a Tuesday night. Imagine being 8 years old and opening your lunchbox to find chopped olive and cream cheese on pumpernickel. Either your mom was ahead of her time, or she found an old cocktail recipe card and just went with it. This sandwich was salty, tangy, creamy, and somehow kind of grown up. You had green olives chopped so fine they could sneak into your taste buds before your brain caught on, mixed with cream cheese until it was a spread so thick it stuck to the knife like it had a mission. All of that smeared onto a slice of deep dark pumpernickel that practically demanded you respect it. It was not flashy, it was not sweet, and no kid was trading their cookie for it, but it had an edge, the kind of flavor that got better the more you chewed. Somewhere along the way, this party appetizer snuck into lunchboxes, Tupperware, and even a few kitchen counters at 2 in the morning. It was strange, but the key to a good sandwich was in its simple ingredients, and Graham knew it better than anyone. That's why she whipped up the classic chicken salad sandwich anytime we craved some comfort food. Chicken salad has been a beloved dish in American homes since the mid-1800s. Grandma decided to make it into a hearty sandwich to make snack time better. Grandma's version of the chicken salad sandwich often included unique ingredients passed down through generations. Depending on where your grandma hails from, her chicken salad sandwich recipe might have a regional flair. In the South, you might find it spiced with a bit of mustard or pickle juice, while in New England, cranberries might be tossed in for a touch of tartness. Remember what chilly days at Graham's called for back in the day? If you guessed hot turkey sandwich, you're absolutely right. This sandwich was another one of Grandma's delicious ways of using up leftover turkey from Thanksgiving. This sandwich featured slices of tender turkey served hot, often open-faced, with a generous ladle of rich, savory gravy poured over the top. Sounds delicious, right? Grandma made her hot turkey sandwich special with the gravy. Whether she made it from scratch with turkey drippings or used a trusted recipe, the rich gravy soaked into the bread, making each bite juicy and flavorful. She knew that nothing went to waste, and the hot turkey sandwich was a delicious way to make the most of those leftovers. If you've ever walked the streets of downtown New York, I'm sure you're familiar with the infamous pastrami on rye. If your grandma's from the Big Apple, chances are her recipe is highly regarded. This sandwich became a staple in Jewish delis in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, thanks to Eastern European immigrants. This one just featured an old-fashioned slice of pastrami on rye bread and a dollop of mustard. Grandma knew that when it came to sandwiches, sometimes less is more, and pastrami on rye is the perfect example of that. But hey, don't forget no pastrami on rye is complete without a pickle on the side. The tartness of a dill pickle or the sweetness of a bread and butter pickle is the perfect contrast to the savory pastrami. In the summer, when tomatoes were in season and fresh produce was at its peak, tomato and sugar sandwiches became a beloved choice. Thick slices of juicy, ripe tomatoes, sprinkled with sugar, were placed between slices of bread. It might sound odd, but the sweetness of the sugar balanced the tang of the tomatoes, making it an unexpectedly delicious combo. Some people even added a little mayonnaise to the mix for extra creaminess. This sandwich became a perfect treat, often eaten barefoot on the porch in the warmth of summer. It was simple and sweet, a perfect way to enjoy the bounty of the season without spending much. While it was certainly a summertime favorite, this combo is one of those meals that people today may never quite understand. But if you think this sweet and savory duo is odd, the next sandwich is even more unconventional. Sometimes a quick and simple solution was needed when the month's budget was running low. Enter the cold hot dog slices and ketchup sandwich. This sandwich was made with leftover hot dogs, sliced cold, and slathered with ketchup between slices of bread. It wasn't fancy, but it was cheap, easy to make, and comforting. After payday, people might have splurged on hot dogs, but by the end of the week, those leftovers would be repurposed into this quick fix. The cold hot dog slices were nothing more than a vehicle for the ketchup, but when combined with bread, it made a satisfying snack or lunch. There wasn't much finesse to it, but it worked. It might not win any culinary awards, but when you've got limited resources, you make do with what you have. And while this sandwich may seem like an odd pairing, it's definitely one you'd want to try if you're in need of a last-minute meal. However, if you're craving something a little heartier, the next sandwich might just be what you're looking for. The bacon and peanut butter sandwich was one that caught our eyes the most. Crispy bacon paired with peanut butter sounded like a combination that could just work somehow. This was a no-brainer for Americans. If their left kidney is sustained by peanut butter, the right is sustained by bacon. Both together probably provide just the right amount of fuel to get through the day or a grueling 9-to-5 shift. A great condiment to go with this is unsweetened ketchup, because most ketchups today have artificial sweeteners. This isn't as popular as it used to be, but it hasn't declined enough in renown that it's that outlandish of an idea. Give it a try some weekend, you might be pleasantly surprised. Sautéed or caramelized onions provide just the right complementary flavor to the crispy bacon, while also not overloading your taste buds because of the peanut butter. Wild plum and smoked turkey and early native pitas. It sounds like something out of a high-end cookbook, but it was a winter staple for many northeastern tribes. The turkey, smoked over slow embers with bark and pine, kept for weeks. The wild plums, boiled down into a thick, tart chutney, added both preservation and punch. The pita wasn't quite what we imagine today. It was a thin cornbread round, flexible enough to fold but sturdy enough to hold meat and fruit. Each bite was smoky, tangy, and just sweet enough to feel nourishing. In the lean winter months, this sandwich wasn't just practical, it was brilliant. High in protein, balanced in flavor, and compact for travel. Hunters carried them, mothers packed them, and elders handed down the recipe orally. Now it's barely remembered outside food anthropology circles, but it deserves a place among history's great handheld meals. Somehow, ancient practicality always had a way of tasting good. Cheese and apple sandwiches were the bite you never knew you needed. Sweet, sharp, and surprisingly grown up for something packed in a kid's lunchbox. Thin slices of crisp apple, usually red or golden, laid against salty cheddar cheese and pressed between soft bread, created a mix of flavor that hit every corner of the tongue. The crunch of the apple, the tang of the cheese, it all worked. There was something about that pairing, fruit and dairy, sweet and savory, that felt more like a farmer's market find than a cafeteria mainstay. But for many kids, especially those with creative parents or fond memories of fall, it was a staple. Sometimes it showed up on wheat bread, sometimes toasted. Occasionally even wrapped in foil with a note that said, "Eat me cold, it's better that way." It was not a flashy sandwich. No bright colors or sauces. Just good ingredients and smart contrast. Over time, it faded into the background as processed snacks took over, but that apple and cheese combo still feels like one of those rare lunchbox moments when everything just made sense. The cheese and pickle sandwich is one of those odd combinations that divides people at the very first bite. On one side of the bread, you've got sharp cheddar or American cheese. On the other, sliced dill pickles or even sweet bread and butter chips. It's a collision of creamy and tangy, savory and sour. Some folks butter the bread, some toast it, others eat it plain and cold. But the core idea remains the same. It's a sandwich that feels retro in the best way, like something you'd find packed in wax paper alongside a thermos of milk. It's humble but bold, weird but strangely addictive. Born from the era of rationing and refrigerator scrounging, it was perfect for meatless lunches or quick snacks when the deli drawer was bare, and somehow it always worked, especially if the cheese was sharp enough to bite back. Today, it lives on in lunchboxes, late-night cravings, and memories of brown bag field trips. It might not be everyone's favorite, but for those who get it, there's nothing else quite like it. The hot brown was what you made when you had leftovers and a little bit of pride. Open-faced, built on a thick slice of toast, then loaded with turkey and bacon. But what made it special was the Mornay sauce, a rich, cheesy bechamel poured over the top and broiled until it bubbled and browned. It came out of Louisville, Kentucky from the Brown Hotel, but it made its way to family tables when there was turkey to use up and dads wanted something more than a cold sandwich. It was warm. It was indulgent. And it felt like dinner, even if it was built from scraps. Some versions added tomato slices, some skipped the broiler. But the essence stayed. Meat, cheese, bread, and heat. Working men who came home hungry could make one in 10 minutes. It was not pretty. It did not stack well. But it hit the spot and filled the plate. Sometimes that was all you asked of a meal. So, this next sandwich is also typically made from only 3 ingredients, but it's still one of Grandma's most iconic creations. I'm talking about the infamous BLT sandwich. The name is an abbreviation for the ingredients: bacon, lettuce, and tomato. This sandwich was a summertime favorite, especially when tomatoes were at their ripest in Graham's garden. The BLT's roots can be traced back to tea sandwiches served in the late 19th century. But it wasn't until World War II when it gained popularity. During this time, supermarkets made bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes more widely available all year round, and Grandma made sure to use them up in the kitchen. A classic BLT is often made with mayonnaise, but some purists argue that the sandwich should be spread with butter instead. Well, it's still up for debate, so make sure to let us know your take on it in the comments. If you've ever had an egg salad sandwich, you might think you know what's coming with the chopped egg and vinegar sandwich. But this isn't your average egg salad. Instead of the usual mayonnaise, this sandwich relied on vinegar or mustard to give the eggs that tangy kick. Hard-boiled eggs were chopped up, mixed with the vinegar or mustard, and spread between 2 slices of bread. It wasn't the most luxurious meal, but it was cheap, filling, and had a sharp, tangy flavor that worked wonders. It was a makeshift egg salad, but it did the job when you needed something simple and satisfying. The vinegar or mustard added just enough zing to make the sandwich stand out. And while this might have been a favorite for some, the next sandwich is all about taking those beans you've got left over and turning them into something great. The Kmart submarine sandwich was not just food. It was part of the shopping trip. You would head into Kmart for socks, a screwdriver, maybe a birthday card, and at the back of the store, the cafeteria called to you. That big white roll, sliced open and loaded with ham, salami, bologna, and slices of American cheese. Lettuce, banana peppers, maybe a swipe of mustard or a dollop of mayonnaise, wrapped in wax paper and handed over the counter by a teenager in a paper hat. It was not gourmet. It was not healthy, but it was satisfying. It had heft. You sat at a red table with molded plastic chairs and bit in. It was salty and soft and just a little greasy. The flavors bled into the bread by the last bite. You drank a fountain soda and wiped your hands with a brown paper napkin. It felt like a reward for getting the errands done. It felt like a pause in a world that never stopped moving. The Kmart sub was not trying to be memorable, but it became a memory anyway. Now, bologna is not what you would call glamorous, but in the 1970s, someone took that humble meat and turned it into a straight-up miracle. Enter the bologna pizza sandwich. This was not a joke, it was genius. You start with a soft hamburger bun, maybe left over from the weekend cookout. On the bottom half, you lay down a slice of bologna, and if you are doing it right, you give it a quick sizzle in a frying pan so the edges curl up like a little meatball. Then you spoon on tomato sauce, canned, homemade, whatever you have, and top it with shredded mozzarella. After that, into the broiler it goes. What comes out is pure nostalgia with melted cheese dripping down the sides and the edges of the bologna just crispy enough to give it bite. It smelled like school lunch and after-school cartoons. This was a sandwich that did not care what anyone thought. It was pizza-inspired, budget-friendly, and full of attitude. A little greasy? Sure. A little weird? Absolutely. But no one ever forgot their first one. But if bologna in a broiler felt like a stretch, get ready for the canned spread that showed up in lunchboxes, picnic baskets, and every pantry with a shelf of shame, and somehow stayed beloved. Pickles come in pairs with olives, so it is only right to mention cream cheese and olive sandwiches next. Cream cheese was an ingredient that was already a staple in many American homes because of its popularity in desserts around the 1970s. Olives are, well, olives, and if you do not have a bottle always ready to go, you need to reevaluate your grocery shopping list for this month. Mixing the two made both substantially better, like those power-ups Iron Man gets whenever he puts on a bulkier suit. If people felt really fancy, they would put the olives on the stove for a while and have them fried. Not only was it great on its own, but people also did not stop at just frying. Both of them made for really awesome toppings on meat-based sandwiches. We would not mind seeing more olives on our plate today for sure. They are a classic we feel work in any era. Sunchoke and pine nut flatbread wraps were desert energy bars before energy bars existed. Sunchokes, those nutty, crunchy roots, were sliced thin, pan-roasted, and wrapped with toasted pine nuts inside maize flatbread. No sauce, no garnish, just sunlight turned into food. Southwest tribes used these for midday meals and travel snacks, giving bursts of energy without weighing the body down. Sunchokes, with their natural sweetness, paired perfectly with the buttery richness of pine nuts. The wrap was soft, earthy, and grounding. Nothing fancy, but everything thoughtful. You could walk all day with one of these in your satchel and still feel strong. Today, sunchokes are rediscovered only by chefs looking for obscure ingredients, while pine nuts are sold at luxury prices. The wrap? Gone. What was once survival food has become exotic. But there was nothing exotic about it when it kept you going through dry winds and endless miles. We did not call them superfoods, we just called them food. And that might be the biggest difference of all. Fried bologna sandwiches were the working-class answer to gourmet, cheap, greasy, and absolutely perfect. A slice of bologna slapped into a hot skillet until it curled at the edges, sometimes scored in the center to keep it flat, then dropped onto bread and finished with mustard, cheese, or whatever was around. It sizzled, it popped, it smelled like something you were not supposed to enjoy this much. And kids loved it. The edges got crisp, the center stayed soft. It was the kind of sandwich that left a grease spot on the bag and a smile on your face. Fried bologna was not subtle, but it was reliable. It was warm and familiar. It made lunch feel like breakfast and dinner all at once. Parents made them quickly, often with one hand on the stove and the other helping with homework. It was the sandwich of multitaskers, of big families and thin budgets. And yet it tasted rich. It felt like a treat. Today you barely see them unless you go looking. But for those who grew up on it, fried bologna was not just food. It was a full sensory memory wrapped in white bread. Egg salad sandwiches were messy, mushy, and magical in the way only school lunch legends can be. Made from chopped hard-boiled eggs, mayonnaise, and a touch of mustard or seasoning, egg salad was the sandwich that smelled strong and stuck with you, literally and figuratively. It was packed between slices of soft bread and often left a faint imprint on the bag it came in. And yet, it was beloved. There was something comforting about it, something that felt homemade and humble. It was a meal you could trust. Some versions had bits of celery or onion, others kept it basic. But every egg salad sandwich came with a promise. You were going to be full, and you were going to remember it. Kids either cherished it or turned up their noses. There was no in-between. But for those who loved it, egg salad was the crown jewel of the lunchbox. Today, it is often replaced by cleaner, quieter options, tucked away in prepackaged containers at the back of the deli case. Way before anyone was throwing around the word fusion, people were already stuffing taco night into a sandwich roll and calling it lunch. The taco-inspired ground beef sandwich was a bold, brilliant mess of spicy ground beef seasoned with chili powder, cumin, and whatever was on hand. This was the 70s after all. If it came in a seasoning packet, it was probably fair game. The meat got piled high into a soft hoagie roll, topped with shredded cheddar, crisp lettuce, and sometimes a few sad tomatoes trying to keep up. Every bite was an explosion of salty heat and melty cheese. It was not clean, it was not elegant, but it was delicious. This was comfort food that was borrowed from the taco truck before taco trucks were even a thing. You could find it at school cafeterias, mom-and-pop diners, and even in the occasional backyard cookout where somebody decided to get creative. The bread soaked up all that seasoned grease and somehow it just worked. You were not going to win any awards for presentation, but your taste buds would be too busy partying to care. And speaking of comfort food with attitude, the next sandwich on our list came straight from the king himself, and probably your aunt's frying pan. Florida was known for its delicious sandwiches, and grandmas in the Sunshine State were masters at making the Cuban sandwich. It was brought to the States by Cuban immigrants and instantly became the talk of the town in Tampa and Miami. Traditionally, Cuban sandwiches were pressed in a sandwich press, or plancha, which gave them their distinctive crispy crust. Grandma knew the secret to a great Cuban sandwich was in the press. The sandwich had to be pressed just right, so that the bread was crispy and the cheese melted, but the inside was still warm and full of flavor. There's even a special day to celebrate this sandwich. National Cuban Sandwich Day is celebrated on August 23rd each year. Make sure to mark your calendars. Now this one had drama. The tuna boat melt was not just a sandwich, it was an event. You start with a sub roll, soft in the middle, split open like it is waiting for a miracle. In goes a scoop of tuna salad, but not the watery kind. This was chunky, mayo-rich, maybe with a little celery if you were lucky. Then come the tomato slices, thin, juicy, and laid down like armor. And finally, cheddar cheese, shredded, sliced, whatever worked, blanketing the whole thing like a warm hug. Slide the whole sandwich under a broiler and wait. That is the moment things change. The edges of the bread crisp up, the cheese bubbles and browns, and the tomato softens just enough to soak into the tuna. You pull it out just in time to stop it from burning, but almost wish it had. This was the sandwich version of comfort food theater. It smelled like warmth. It looked like golden perfection. It tasted like something way fancier than it was. Parents made it to use up tuna, but kids remembered it like a feast. But if this one was golden, wait until you meet the sandwich that vanished from lunch counters just as fast as it appeared. Shrimp salad rolls were the fancy cousin who only showed up at baby showers and bridal brunches, but when they did, they made sure you noticed. These sandwiches were served cold, creamy, and full of old-school charm. Chopped shrimp got mixed with mayonnaise, a little diced celery for crunch, and maybe a squeeze of lemon juice if the recipe came from someone who read food magazines. The mix got spooned onto a buttered roll, soft, pillowy, and lightly toasted if you were lucky. It was rich but light, simple but elevated. You were not scarfing it down with fries and soda. No, this one came with iced tea in a glass and maybe a napkin folded just right. It was the kind of sandwich that made you sit a little straighter. Perfect for luncheons, community cookbooks, and any moment where finger foods and floral plates were involved. But here is the thing, it was good, really good. The shrimp brought just enough sweetness. The celery kept it from being too heavy, and the bread soaked it all in without falling apart. It was a sandwich that whispered luxury in a decade where not much else did. And if shrimp salad was for special occasions, the next sandwich took something sacred, Thanksgiving dinner, and made it work any day of the week. Acorn bread and wild berry meat sandwiches were forest sandwiches in the truest sense, built from the woods and eaten in silence under trees. The bread came first, made from acorn flour that had to be soaked, pounded, and leached of bitterness. It was a chore, a ritual, and a necessity. Then came the filling, thin slices of dried venison or rabbit, layered with crushed blackberries, choke cherries, or huckleberries, depending on the season. The sweetness cut the gaminess. The bread crumbled just slightly as you bit in. This was a sandwich that kept for days, that filled you up without making you heavy. It tasted like bark, rain, and sweetness after struggle. It traveled well. It honored the land. Native children once carried these into the woods like modern kids carry packed lunches. Now, acorn flour is a novelty ingredient. Dried game is bought in sealed plastic, and the pairing of both with wild berries no supermarket can replicate has been mostly lost. If someone handed you one today, would your mouth even recognize it as food or just memory? We stopped making these not because they were bad, but because we stopped doing the work they required. And maybe that is what hurts most. Juniper berry roasted squirrel isn't a punchline. It was survival food that somehow managed to taste like it belonged at a campfire banquet. When meat was scarce, squirrels were plentiful, especially in wooded regions where they practically fell into the stew pot. Roasting them with crushed juniper berries gave the gamey meat a bright, piney lift. Once tender, the meat was shredded and packed into flatbread, usually made from whatever grain or seed flour was on hand, acorn, corn, or even cattail. The sandwich was small but rich, chewy but satisfying. Hunters ate it on the trail, families shared them during autumn gatherings, and kids likely learned early not to waste even the tail. Juniper helped with digestion too, making it medicinal as much as flavorful. Today, most folks would turn up their noses at squirrel meat, but back then, it was simply another part of the land's offering. One bite of that peppery, slightly wild sandwich, and you'd understand. It was rough country cuisine with a surprising touch of finesse. The chow mein sandwich was chaos held together by two buns, and somehow it worked. Born in southeastern Massachusetts, this Frankenstein creation placed a mound of crispy chow mein noodles smothered in thick brown gravy between two hamburger buns. The result was a crunchy, savory, totally illogical meal that became a school lunch staple in some corners of the country. Kids would unwrap their foil-wrapped mystery and find a puddle of sauce and starch that somehow filled every craving and left fingers coated in grease. This was the kind of sandwich you could not eat neatly, and that was half the fun. The noodles poked out the sides, the sauce soaked into the bread, and no two bites were ever the same. The chow mein sandwich was a lunchtime dare wrapped in cultural mashup, a reminder that not all great foods make perfect sense on paper. Over time, regional oddities like this one gave way to standardization. One bite, and you were somewhere between comfort food and total confusion. And somehow that felt exactly right. There is something dangerously comforting about mixing bacon grease with anything sweet, and that is exactly what bacon and apple butter on white bread was. You take crisp, salty bacon, still warm from the skillet, and press it into a slice of soft white bread that has been generously smeared with apple butter. That is it. No lettuce, no cheese, no rules. The combination was 100% homemade magic. It tasted like fall mornings, cast iron skillets, and someone's grandma telling you not to eat too fast. Apple butter gave it this rich, spiced flavor that clung to your mouth just long enough for the bacon to come crashing through. It was smoky. It was sweet. It was not trying to impress anyone. The real win here was in how it reused leftovers. If breakfast was done, and you had a few stray strips of bacon and a jar of apple butter on hand, this sandwich practically made itself. The kind of thing you whipped up while the coffee was still brewing. Maybe it never made it to a diner menu, but it made it to enough hearts to matter. And speaking of sandwiches that mattered, let us talk about the skyscraper of cold cuts that ruled every diner plate with a toothpick flag on top. When the budget was tight and even jam or jelly was out of reach, butter and sugar sandwiches came to the rescue. It was as simple as it sounds: a thick layer of butter spread on white bread, then topped with a generous sprinkle of sugar. For many, this became the go-to treat, especially during the Depression. It was sweet, satisfying, and didn't require much in terms of ingredients. The butter added richness, and the sugar gave it a touch of sweetness, making it feel like a real dessert, even if it was just a way to fill the stomach when times were tough. The best part? It was incredibly cheap to make, and you didn't have to go hunting for expensive ingredients. Families would often have this as a snack or even as a light dessert to end the day. Despite how simple it seems, there's something comforting about its humble sweetness. But as simple as butter and sugar may be, it's about to get even simpler with the next sandwich on our list. The bologna and ketchup sandwich was the lunchroom underdog, a squishy, no-frills sandwich that somehow earned its place among childhood favorites. It was cheap, fast, and unapologetically plain. A slice or two of bologna, straight from the fridge, slapped onto soft sandwich bread, and dressed with a squirt of ketchup. That was it. No lettuce, no cheese, no frills. But in its simplicity was something oddly satisfying. The bologna was smooth and salty. The ketchup added tang and sweetness. The bread held it all together like a peace treaty between convenience and hunger. It showed up in mid-century lunchboxes packed by parents who needed to stretch a budget and feed a family. Kids would open their bags, see that red smear pressed through the plastic wrap, and know exactly what to expect. There was no surprise, and somehow that was comforting. It was a sandwich that never pretended to be more than it was, and maybe that is why it stuck around as long as it did. You rarely see them now, lost in a sea of organic spreads and artisanal fillings. Sloppy Joes were the lunchtime wild card, messy, meaty, and guaranteed to stain your shirt. Every cafeteria had a day when trays were heavy with hamburger buns oozing with ground beef cooked in tomato sauce and mystery spices. It was not elegant, it was not clean, but it was comforting. Sloppy Joes were everything lunch was supposed to be: warm, hearty, and just a little unruly. One bite and half of it landed on your tray. That was the rule. Napkins were never enough. These sandwiches showed up in school lunch lines, birthday parties, and weeknight dinners when parents had 30 minutes and a pound of beef. They were versatile, easy, and crowd-pleasing in the way only something unapologetically simple could be. The sauce was sweet and tangy, the meat hearty, the buns soft and doomed from the first bite. You could smell Sloppy Joe Day before you saw it on your plate. Over the years, they lost their place to healthier, neater options, but no one ever forgot them. Speaking of meaty sandwiches, the Turkey Club sandwich was another fan favorite. Now, this one was known for its 3 layers of bread, which made it stand out from the rest of the sandwiches on the table. The club sandwich has its roots in American culinary history, with some sources suggesting it was first served in private social clubs in the late 19th century. By the time Grandma was making them, it had already become the talk of the town. Gram often made this one the day after Thanksgiving when there was no shortage of leftover roast turkey in the refrigerator. The key ingredient in this sandwich was crispy bacon, which Gram added to make it kid-friendly and 10 times more delicious. Grandma's Turkey Club sandwich was often cut in quarters or halves, which made it easier to eat, and this was the first time sandwiches were cut diagonally. And remember the toothpicks Gram used to hold it together with colorful cellophane frills? Brings back memories, doesn't it? The apple and mayo sandwich might seem like a strange combination, but it was a surprisingly popular choice during tough times when ingredients were scarce and creativity in the kitchen was key. Sliced apples, typically tart varieties, were paired with creamy mayonnaise between slices of bread. The sweetness of the apples contrasted with the rich, tangy mayo, creating a unique and unexpected flavor profile. It wasn't the type of sandwich you would find in any deli, but it became a go-to option for those looking for something quick and different. The apples, which were relatively inexpensive and often readily available, provided a bit of freshness and texture, while the mayo added a comforting creaminess that tied the whole thing together. The apple and mayo sandwich was especially popular during times of rationing or when fresh produce was hard to come by, offering a rare chance to enjoy a sweet, crunchy bite. While it wasn't a culinary masterpiece, it was a meal that worked with what was available, perfect for those on tight budgets. The sandwich wasn't fancy, but it had an undeniable charm. For many, it was an odd but delicious treat that felt like a luxury in a world where simple ingredients were used to make the most of every meal. And if you thought the apple and mayo sandwich was unexpected, just wait until the next sandwich, where another quirky combination takes center stage with a surprising flavor twist. Ham salad sandwiches were what you made when dinner became tomorrow's lunch, and nothing went to waste. Chopped leftover ham mixed with mayonnaise, a spoonful of relish, and maybe a dash of mustard turned into something far greater than the sum of its parts. The result was creamy, salty, tangy, and just textured enough to let you know this was not store-bought. It sat heavy on white bread and came wrapped in wax paper or pressed gently into a sandwich bag that stuck to the crust by lunch hour. Kids either loved ham salad or politely declined the swap. It had presence. A slightly chunky spread with pink edges and flecks of green. Grandparents swore by it. Cafeterias served it weekly, and for a long time, it was a way to turn leftovers into something that felt brand new. It was a lunchbox classic for those raised with one hand on the cutting board and the other on the budget. Today, it rarely shows up in modern school lunches, replaced by prepackaged options and flashier flavors. Remember what chilly days at Graham's called for back in the day? If you guessed hot turkey sandwich, you're absolutely right. This sandwich was another one of Grandma's delicious ways of using up leftover turkey from Thanksgiving. This sandwich featured slices of tender turkey served hot, often open-faced, with a generous ladle of rich, savory gravy poured over the top. Sounds delicious, right? Grandma made her hot turkey sandwich special with the gravy. Whether she made it from scratch with turkey drippings or used a trusted recipe, the rich gravy soaked into the bread, making each bite juicy and flavorful. She knew that nothing went to waste, and the hot turkey sandwich was a delicious way to make the most of those leftovers. Opossum tail sandwiches with spice ash rub might raise eyebrows today, but in Southeastern traditions, they were once a beloved delicacy. The tails, slow cooked until the meat slipped off the bone, were seasoned with a rub made from charred herbs and spices. Yes, actual culinary ash. This gave the meat a smoky, aromatic flavor, unlike anything you'd find in modern barbecue. The ash rub wasn't just for flavor, it also helped preserve the meat slightly and added essential minerals to the diet. Back then, nothing was wasted. Opossum wasn't a last resort, it was a choice. Today, it's relegated to urban legends and offbeat cooking shows, but once it was part of regular tables and seasonal feasts, and in that context, it wasn't weird. It was just dinner. Peanut butter and pickle sandwiches were the lunchbox legends nobody admits to loving, but many still secretly miss. Born out of the Great Depression, this odd pairing was less about culinary boldness and more about making do with what was left in the pantry. Peanut butter was cheap, packed with protein, and shelf-stable. Pickles added crunch, tang, and just enough bite to wake up plain white bread. Somehow, the combination worked. The sweet creaminess of the peanut butter and the sharp, vinegary snap of a dill or bread and butter pickle created a balance that stayed with you, whether you liked it or not. These sandwiches were slipped into wax paper and handed off like rationed gold. Some kids traded them. Others guarded them with their lives. They were cheap, they were weird, and they were unforgettable. As the decades rolled on and lunch menus got glossier, peanut butter and pickle sandwiches faded from view. It might not win a gourmet prize today, but back then, it was a masterpiece made from struggle and stubbornness. You knew the Red Devil logo before you ever tasted it. That Underwood deviled ham can have a certain energy to it, bold, strange, and just a little too happy for what was inside. Still, one taste and you got it. Deviled ham salad was the low-key hero of school lunches and late-night sandwiches. It was creamy, salty, a little tangy, and just weird enough to make you wonder how it became so popular. Mix that canned meat paste with mayonnaise and relish, maybe a dash of mustard if you were daring, and you had a spread that knew how to work a slice of white bread. It was chilled, it was comforting, and it stuck to the roof of your mouth like a secret you could not wait to tell. This was the kind of sandwich you did not brag about, but secretly loved. And it was there for you, on road trips, in brown bags, and even at midnight when you could not sleep. It never looked fancy, but it never needed to. Deviled ham was a flavor bomb dressed up like a cold cut. But if you wanted something a little fresher, a little more deli style, then nothing hit quite like a stack of corned beef with a side of slaw and just enough spice to make you pay attention. The mashed potato sandwich is one of those unassuming comfort foods that became a staple for many families during hard times. When there wasn't much in the pantry, leftover mashed potatoes provided a quick and filling solution. The sandwich itself was simple. Just a hearty serving of mashed potatoes spread between two slices of bread. While it might sound basic, the potatoes brought both substance and satisfaction, especially when other food options were limited. The mashed potatoes could be enhanced with black pepper or a drizzle of gravy if you were lucky enough to have it, adding a little extra flavor to what was essentially a very simple dish. The real beauty of the mashed potato sandwich was its versatility. If you had no other ingredients, it could still make a fulfilling meal. It was also a great way to use up leftovers from a previous meal, turning a side dish into the main course. This sandwich wasn't about gourmet flavors or complex ingredients. It was about being resourceful and making the most out of what you had. For many, it was an affordable, easy way to stretch meals further, especially when money was tight. The mashed potato sandwich might not have been the most glamorous option, but it was a meal that served its purpose well. And while it might seem simple, the next sandwich on our list takes leftovers and transforms them into a surprisingly hearty option. Ham salad was the sandwich that crept into your life without warning and just stayed. It was never flashy, never demanding, but it had a way of showing up when you needed it most. Diced ham, usually the leftovers from Sunday dinner, got chopped fine and tossed with mayonnaise, sweet pickle relish, and maybe a squirt of yellow mustard or a spoonful of Miracle Whip if you were feeling wild. It was smooth, creamy, with just enough tang to make you wonder why you did not eat it more often. Spread it thick on soft white bread, throw on a lettuce leaf if you're trying to be classy, and you had a sandwich that felt like summer picnics and small-town potlucks. It tasted like home. Like old Tupperware containers pulled from the fridge and packed into a picnic basket with a bag of chips and a slice of pie wrapped in foil. No one ever called it their favorite, but no one turned it down either. That is the magic of ham salad. It stayed in the background, steady and familiar. But not every sandwich played it safe. Some brought the heat, and maybe a little spice from south of the border. Sometimes, simplicity was the answer when it came to making a meal out of what was available, and the ketchup sandwich was a prime example of that. When food was scarce and the pantry was running low, a ketchup sandwich became a quick, affordable solution. It was as simple as it sounds, just bread and ketchup. It may not seem like much, but for many families, it was a meal that could be thrown together in a matter of minutes, with nothing more than 2 slices of bread and a squeeze of ketchup. There was something comforting about the tangy sweetness of the ketchup paired with the soft, familiar bread, making it a surprisingly satisfying combination. It wasn't about fancy ingredients. It was about making the most out of what you had. If you were lucky and payday wasn't far off, you might even add a Kraft single for a little extra richness, transforming it into a cheese and ketchup sandwich. But in its most basic form, the ketchup sandwich was a testament to the resourcefulness of families making do in tough times. It was a meal that required little preparation but still filled the stomach. This sandwich wasn't about high-end flavors or ingredients. It was about stretching what little you had and getting through the day with a simple, reliable meal. And while the ketchup sandwich was straightforward, it's about to get a little more indulgent with the next sandwich, where the flavor combinations get a bit more interesting. The Elvis sandwich is more than just a quirky snack. It's a piece of pop culture history. Legend has it, Elvis Presley adored this decadent combination. peanut butter, ripe banana, and crispy bacon layered between slices of white bread. Some say it must be pan-fried in butter until golden and melty. Others swear by the raw version, eaten cold in the dead of night. Either way, it's not exactly health food, it's more of a fever dream. This sandwich is sweet, salty, creamy, and crunchy all at once, much like the king himself. It became a symbol of indulgence, a recipe so outrageous it could only belong to someone larger than life. Fans have recreated it for decades, sometimes adding honey, sometimes toasting it, but always treating it like an edible homage. It's not just about flavor, it's about nostalgia, rebellion, and letting your taste buds run wild. The Elvis sandwich is one of those rare things you try once as a joke and then crave when nobody's watching. Just don't ask your doctor what they think about it. Walnut paste and apple bark sandwiches sound like a woodland riddle, but they were once a clever traveler's snack. Walnut meats were ground into a thick, oily paste, protein-rich, slightly bitter, and deeply satisfying. That paste was spread onto thin sheets of dried apple slices, sometimes softened slightly by heat, other times left crisp and bark-like. The result was a kind of nut butter and fruit sandwich that could be folded up, packed away, and eaten on the go without spoiling. The flavor was earthy and sweet, with a dry crunch that left your mouth thirsty but your belly full. Some versions even included hickory nuts or a drizzle of wild honey when available, though those were luxuries. It didn't need to be pretty, it just needed to work. Today, apple bark is nearly unheard of, and walnut paste has been overtaken by peanut butter and branding. But this was the original trail ration, prepared without a kitchen, without a label, just hands, heat, and memory. The cheese and pickle sandwich was for the kids who liked things sharp and sour, a little strange, and completely satisfying. A thick slice of cheddar, sometimes aged, layered with sweet pickles or tangy dill slices pressed between slices of sandwich bread, often white, occasionally wheat. It was a flavor bomb. Salty cheese met vinegary crunch, and somehow the combination made more sense than you would think. This was not a loud sandwich. It did not leak or crumble or stain your lunch bag. It sat there quietly, confident in its simplicity. You either craved it or could not stand it. But for those who loved it, it was perfect. It was the kind of sandwich you could eat cold, no heating or fuss required. It stayed intact. It delivered every time. Over the years, cheese and pickle became more of a British delicacy than an American staple. But there was a time when this sandwich showed up in lunchboxes across the country. Today, it is rarely seen in school cafeterias. The peanut butter and banana sandwich was sticky, sweet, and oddly sacred, especially if you grew up with a radio playing Elvis in the background. Soft white bread cradled ripe banana slices layered atop thick peanut butter, creating a sandwich that was pure indulgence and pure nostalgia all at once. It was comfort food at its simplest. No baking, no slicing, just a knife, a spoon, and one slightly bruised banana. Kids loved it. Parents trusted it. Lunchboxes welcomed it. Every bite was creamy, soft, and just a little bit messy. Sometimes it got mashed during the morning bus ride, but that only made it better, denser, more unified, like the ingredients had been given time to fall in love. Elvis Presley may have added bacon to his, but most kids were happy with just the basics. Over the years, the peanut butter and banana sandwich faded from lunch menus, traded out for wraps and granola bars. But it never really disappeared. Wild rice cake sandwiches with duck were sticky, rich, and deeply satisfying. Meals built near lakes, cooked over fire, and eaten with reverence. The rice was hand-harvested by canoe, soaked and shaped into firm patties, then griddled until crisp on the outside and chewy inside. Duck meat, usually smoked or slow-roasted, went between them. No sauce needed. The fat from the duck seeped into the rice, making each bite earthy, oily, and full of depth. These were celebration foods and everyday lunches rolled into one. The sandwich was portable, delicious, and deeply tied to the rhythms of water and migration. Wild rice still exists, but much of it is cultivated and stripped of its ritual. Duck is a delicacy now, not a staple. Together, they were once food and identity. We have kept the ingredients, but not the reason. Can you taste the difference when you do not know why it mattered? The scrapple sandwich is exactly what the name suggests: fried slices of scrapple on bread. Traditionally, this sandwich would be sliced and prepared in a skillet, under a thick layer of eggs. It definitely became popular around the Maryland to New York district, but the recipe itself is properly ancient. An 1853 extract from a cookbook advises using pork that wouldn't be suitable for sausage. It was also popular for its health benefits. It can be made in a variety of ways, and some people include crispy cabbage on top and make it into a waffle with mayo. Mix and match and see what works best for you. Maybe you'll find something worth sharing. But for now, the scrapple sandwich can only be something you create. With its popularity last seen in the mid-1850s, this sandwich is something that we can only find in old extracts now. One bite, and you got the salty crunch of bacon, the cool snap of lettuce, the savory chew of ham, and that creamy mayo keeping everything glued together. It was tall. It was filling. It was an edible tower of American lunch pride. You could find it at diners, roadside motels, airport cafes, and your Aunt Linda's house on a Sunday afternoon. No one ever finished a club sandwich without looking like they'd just solved a puzzle. Picking it up was half the battle. Eating it cleanly? Impossible. But satisfying? Always. This was the sandwich you ordered when you wanted to feel like you were doing something important. And while this one wore its sandwich royalty crown proudly, the next one took a completely different route, turning cheap lunch meat into the closest thing we ever got to pizza on a bun. Liverwurst might not be everyone's cup of tea, but for those who loved it, there was nothing quite like a liverwurst sandwich. So, liverwurst, or liver sausage, has German roots and is a staple in many European countries. The name liverwurst comes from the German words Leber, which means liver, and Wurst, which means sausage. This one was also made with rye bread and was a common street food in the streets of New York. Grandma gave it a home-like feel by using homemade bread and using fresh veggies and toppings like mustard, pickles, or onions. Grandma knew that liverwurst sandwiches were a bit of a specialty, something that not everyone would appreciate. But for those who did, it was a real treat. Spam and pineapple sandwiches, on the other hand, are a Hawaiian invention that makes some stomachs less audible. On the other hand, if you are anything like us, then maybe the blend of spices, fruits, and canned pork and ham will create a unique flavor trip for you. Spam and pineapple sandwiches in the state of Hawaii would usually be accompanied with things like mango slices or mango chutney, peppers, chili pastes, and fresh coleslaw. All of this really elevated the dish and gave it a strong identity to pull from when it was making impressions on people for the first time in the 70s, and most were good ones. While pineapples are eternally hated in America, this is one mix of different foods that a lot of citizens could get in line for, and that is why we are sad to see this one gone. The lard and salt sandwich is one of those meals that perfectly embodies the ingenuity and resilience of families during the Great Depression, when food was scarce and every penny had to stretch. It was as simple as it sounds, just bread, lard, and a generous sprinkle of salt. The lard, which was a cheap and readily available source of fat, provided the sandwich with richness and moisture, while the salt helped enhance the flavor, making it more palatable. While it may not have been fancy, the lard and salt sandwich was a practical and filling option when other food was out of reach. Bread was often the most affordable ingredient, and lard was something many households had on hand, especially those who lived on farms where pigs were raised for their meat. This sandwich wasn't about gourmet dining, it was about making do with what was available. Despite the lack of variety, it kept hunger at bay and provided some much-needed energy during a time when food options were limited. The baked bean sandwich was exactly what it sounds like. Nothing more, nothing less. You opened a can of baked beans, spooned them onto slices of white bread, and called it lunch. Maybe you added mustard, maybe a leaf of lettuce if you were feeling fancy. But mostly, it was just beans and bread. Cheap, filling, and easy to make with what was already in the pantry. It was not made with love, it was made with necessity. For working men with empty wallets and full houses, this was survival food. It gave energy. It lasted. It was hot or cold or whatever the day required. It might sound strange now, even laughable, but in its time, it made sense. It was a meal made from odds and ends, eaten fast before a shift or in silence after one. Some nights, all you needed was a bite and a break. This gave you both. The Spam sandwich was once a lunchtime savior in lean times, born in the shadow of World War II and fed to generations of hungry kids and working parents. Just slice up a brick of Spam, fry it till golden and crisp on the edges, and sandwich it between two slices of bread. Sometimes mustard showed up, maybe a slice of cheese or a ring of pineapple if someone was feeling tropical. But most of the time, it was just Spam and white bread, eaten hot or cold. It was salty, savory, and always dependable. People loved it or hated it, but either way, it showed up at the table. In Hawaii, Spam sandwiches became something of an art form, embraced with pride and seasoned with local flair. In the mainland, they were often a holdover from tighter times, a cheap protein fix that filled the belly fast. For those who remember it, the Spam sandwich is a symbol of resilience, food that lasted even when the paycheck didn't. The McDLT was a burger with a gimmick that actually worked. McDonald's served it in a special two-sided foam container. One half had the hot patty and bottom bun. The other half had lettuce, tomato, cheese, pickles, and the top bun. The point was to keep the hot side hot and the cool side cool. You had to assemble it yourself. It felt fancy. It felt fun. You would peel back that lid like you were opening something futuristic. A burger with a strategy. The lettuce was still crisp. The tomato was not wilted. The burger was steaming. Then you folded it together and took a bite. It was fast food pretending to be thoughtful. It only lasted a few years in the 1980s before disappearing, partly because the packaging was not great for the environment. But for a while, dads on their lunch breaks or families in the station wagon would crack open that container and feel like they were part of the future, not just a burger, an experience in two halves coming together in one bite. The mayonnaise and lettuce sandwich may seem like an odd combination at first, but it was a simple, satisfying meal for many families during tough times. Before the era of trendy BLTs and elaborate sandwiches, this humble sandwich was a go-to for those looking for something fresh and easy to prepare. Made with crisp iceberg lettuce and creamy mayonnaise, it provided a refreshing crunch and rich flavor, often when other ingredients were too expensive or scarce. Iceberg lettuce was inexpensive and readily available, making it the perfect base for this sandwich. The mayonnaise added a creamy texture, making each bite smooth and comforting. While this sandwich may not have been fancy, it was beloved for its simplicity and the way it brightened up an otherwise basic meal. In times when fresh produce was limited, the lettuce offered a rare dose of green, and the mayo brought a touch of indulgence. It wasn't a sandwich for a gourmet feast, but it was a practical and affordable meal when resources were stretched thin. For many families, the mayonnaise and lettuce sandwich was the only fresh food they could afford. It wasn't about gourmet ingredients or complex flavors. It was about making do with what was available, and it worked. This sandwich served as a reminder of how, sometimes, the simplest meals are the ones that bring comfort. But if you think this sandwich was basic, wait until you see what's next, where the simplicity of the meal gets a little more daring. The cheese dream was the grilled cheese's show-off cousin, open-faced, broiled, and served hot enough to burn the roof of your mouth if you were not careful. It started with a single slice of white bread, toasted just enough to hold its own. On top went a generous pile of shredded cheese. Cheddar was the go-to, but sometimes you got American or a mystery blend from a bag. Then came the real twist. A tomato slice right on top, dusted with paprika for color and just a little kick. Under the broiler it went, bubbling and browning until it looked like something straight off the back of a recipe card. It was humble, sure, but it had flair. You would see these at lunch counters, Sunday night dinners, and school lunch trays where the budget was tight but the flavor still mattered. The tomato added a bit of freshness. The paprika made it feel just fancy enough. And the cheese? Well, that was always the star. It was a small thing, but it delivered big. The cheese dream was a one-slice wonder, a reminder that sometimes the best sandwiches don't even have a top. But if you wanted something a little more refined, a little cooler, and straight from the country club, the next sandwich knew exactly how to dress for the occasion. You have not seen experimental until you have seen a tuna and apple sandwich. Exactly what it sounds like and worse in reality than in your imagination, a tuna salad mixed with chopped apple slices on white bread. Yes, that is literally the entire concept. And no matter what the fusion food crowd tries to say, we are not trying it or buying into the hype. If only to satisfy the curiosity inside us and scratch that must-try everything itch, would we want this back. But strangely, people in the 70s had the opposite opinion. Cans of Pink Lady tuna and Farmer's Market apples were apparently their idea of a good meal back then. Do you think they were onto something? Maybe we are jumping the gun and should take a note out of their book about being open to new tastes. Maple venison biscuit sandwiches were the morning food of hunters, gatherers, and frost-covered fields. You could smell them from a distance. Grain-heavy biscuits cracked open with strips of venison glazed in maple syrup tucked inside like a gift. It was breakfast, yes, but also reward. The venison was lean and chewy, usually left over from stews or fire-cooked roasts. The maple syrup came from trees tapped by hand, slowly boiled down into a dark, sticky dream. When layered into biscuits made from wild or hand-ground grains, the result was a sweet, savory blend that filled the stomach and lifted the spirit. These sandwiches were often shared at sunup when the day was about to get long and hard. Today, you can find maple bacon on every diner menu, but maple venison? Almost never. The flavor has been replaced, commercialized, or forgotten entirely. But it once meant a good hunt, a warm hearth, a day that started with purpose. We traded it all in for drive-through versions that do not ask for anything from us. What do we lose when we stop earning our sweetness? Ham and banana sandwiches are less digestible both literally and figuratively than most of the list, but they actually worked quite well. The trick was in how you sliced them, because if the banana slices were fat and thick while the ham was thin, you would have a really overly sweet sandwich. Meanwhile, if you did the opposite, then you would have a mushy sandwich that did not have any real flavor. If you did get the proportions right, and most people did after their first few tries, then you had a 70s DIY delicacy with simple ingredients. It made sense why most people did not know how to make a good one, because it was not common. People who lived in other decades hated fruit and meat mixes of savory dishes, but they had a lot more room to make an impression with the crowd in the 70s. Maybe people felt very tropical for a decade? The sandwich would be quite an interesting addition in menus today. Deli classics have always been Graham's specialty, and the corned beef sandwich was no exception. This one started out as a nod to the traditions of Eastern European cuisine and became popular in the United States in the early 20th century. In case you're wondering about the name, corned beef comes from the curing process. Corned refers to the large grains of salt that are used to preserve the meat. This was a pretty simple beef sandwich with a hint of mustard, but its taste really spoke for itself. And it even made its way into pop culture by being frequently featured in TV shows, movies, etc. For example, in the film The Godfather, there's a memorable scene where a character is shown eating a corned beef sandwich. If you've seen the movie, I'm sure you remember it. Salmon belly sandwiches with wild greens were pure coastal power. Fatty, rich fish layered with gathered greens and tucked into dough made from maize or even wrapped in kelp. The belly was the prized cut, oiled and luscious, smoked or seared just enough to flake apart. The greens were bitter or sharp, dandelion, nettle, or mustard leaves picked fresh from coastal soil. The bread varied, sometimes dense and baked, other times simply a blanket of dried seaweed. Either way, the effect was the same. Nourishment from land and sea, eaten slowly or taken for a cold journey ahead. Salmon belly is now tossed aside in favor of cleaner cuts. Wild greens are weeded out or sprayed over. And the knowledge of how they fit together? Nearly gone. These sandwiches were medicine in a way. They kept bones strong and hearts full. Now we barely know what to do with them. What happens when we forget how to eat the best parts? If you were a regular at lunch counters in the 1970s, there was one cold cut that had a mysterious charm. pickle and pimento loaf. It had a look that was hard to ignore. A pale pink meat dotted with bright green pickle bits and tiny flecks of red pimento, like a mosaic made by someone who really loved sandwiches. It came sliced thin from behind the deli glass, slapped between white bread with a dab of mayonnaise, and wrapped in wax paper with a soda on the side. You did not question it. You just ate it. The flavor? Tangy, savory, and weirdly sweet, but not in a bad way. It had the texture of bologna, the bite of pickle, and the color scheme of a Christmas tree. For some reason, it vanished from most grocery shelves by the end of the decade. Maybe tastes changed, or maybe we just stopped putting pickles inside our meat. But back then, it was an easy go-to, a bit of fun, and a total conversation starter if you pulled it out during lunch break. Of course, if you thought that sandwich was messy looking, just wait until we dive into the one that was literally impossible to eat without getting sauce all over your hands and loving it. There is nothing tidy about a Sloppy Joe, and that is the whole point. These school cafeteria icons had one mission: to hit like a flavor bomb and leave a trail behind. Tangy ground beef cooked with tomato paste, onions, and whatever seasoning the lunch lady felt like using that day. Scooped in a steaming pile onto soft hamburger buns that were usually a little too small. You would take one bite, and the filling would slide out the other side like it was trying to escape. Your hands? Covered. Your tray? A disaster. Your smile? Huge. They were sweet, salty, savory, and just chaotic enough to make lunch feel like a party. Even the name sounded like something you should not be allowed to say in class. Sloppy Joes were not reserved for fancy moments. They were served with plastic forks and half a chocolate milk carton. But they became legendary. Maybe it was because they tasted like comfort food mixed with rebellion. Or maybe it was just the fact that no one ever got through one without needing extra napkins. Either way, it earned its place in the Sandwich Hall of Fame. But what if I told you there was a sandwich out there that combined egg, gravy, and a hamburger bun, and somehow made it work? Bologna and potato salad sandwiches were just as effective at getting the entire family on the table and doubling as the perfect school lunch for your kid. Grade 5 or high school, none of that mattered, because even adults well into their career enjoyed these. People working long jobs would pack a bologna and potato salad sandwich in their backpack to ensure all their food needs were met. Often, you would come into a home around the afternoon and find kids glued to the TV with a bologna and potato salad sandwich in hand. Mixing in some chicken chunks or chips would only upgrade an already stellar dish, and we definitely want potato salads and this sandwich to make a comeback. The lettuce sandwich was what you got when there was nothing else, and yet it became something more. Just 2 slices of bread and a few crisp leaves in between, maybe with a swipe of butter or a dusting of salt if someone was feeling generous. It was minimalist, it was plain, but in a strange way, it was also pure. In the early 20th century, when meat was a luxury and refrigeration was not guaranteed, the lettuce sandwich became a reliable go-to. It was light, refreshing, almost delicate in a time when food was anything but. Packed into school lunches, it was easy to make, hard to mess up, and always surprising in how much it satisfied. Kids might groan, but they still ate it, and maybe even liked it. Over time, it faded into punchlines and parody, replaced by protein-heavy, sauce-drenched monsters that took 3 napkins to conquer. But the lettuce sandwich was never trying to impress. It was just trying to get the job done, and sometimes that was enough. The cream cheese and olive sandwich was odd on paper, but unforgettable in practice. Just white sandwich bread spread thick with whipped cream cheese, then speckled with chopped green olives. Briny, smooth, slightly sour. A strange comfort for those who grew up with it. Sometimes it was cut in triangles for parties. Sometimes it was wrapped in wax paper for lunch. But it always showed up where simplicity mattered. You did not need meat. You did not need heat. Just a butter knife and a jar of olives with the red pimento centers. The saltiness from the olives blended with the creamy base and softened bread to create a texture people still remember. It was budget-friendly and meatless before anyone called that a lifestyle. Working parents made it in minutes. It was not glamorous. It was not trendy. but it was honest. And for kids who grew up in towns where the grocery store had 4 aisles and one kind of cheese, this sandwich was just different enough to stand out. You might wrinkle your nose at it now, but back then it was part of growing up. Cooked chicken livers mixed with onions and spices came together to create the chicken liver sandwich. Now, out of all the ones on the list, this one has probably stood the test of time the most rigidly. You'll still find it in the odd bistro or cafe here and there. Preparing it is a bit of work, but for those who want to expand their sandwich arsenal, this is a worthy addition. You'll need celery, red onions, curry powder, salt and pepper, and lettuce of your choice. Once you've mixed your meat with your vegetables and spices, it's time to get cooking in a 350-degree skillet and mix well. Once it's all ready, assemble your sandwich and see just why this was so popular around the 1940-1960s. If you ever ate one of these sandwiches, you know the taste of simpler times. So share your favorite below, like the video, and subscribe for more forgotten flavors.